Lagos was burning. The acrid smell of smoke filled Adebayo's nostrils as he crouched behind an overturned Keke Marwa, his heart pounding in his ears. The streets that once bustled with life now echoed with distant gunfire and the occasional scream. It had been 3 months since the government collapsed. What started as protests over corruption and economic inequality quickly spiraled into full-blown chaos. Now, various factions fought for control of Nigeria's largest city, leaving ordinary citizens caught in the crossfire. Adebayo clutched his phone, praying the battery would last long enough to contact his sister, Folake. They had been separated during the initial riots, and he'd been searching for her ever since. The last message he received simply read, "Omo Odale," help. He had no idea what it meant, but the desperation in those few words chilled him to the bone. A sudden explosion rocked the street, showering debris and sending Adebayo scrambling for better cover. As the dust settled, he heard something that made his blood run cold. Whispers, barely audible, speaking in a language he didn't recognize. Peering around the corner, Adebayo saw a group of figures moving through the haze. Their movements were unnaturally fluid, almost gliding across the broken pavement. As they drew closer, he realized with horror that their eyes were completely black, reflecting no light. One of them turned, staring directly at Adebayo's hiding spot. A voice, both inside and outside his head, hissed, "Omo Odale calls. Join us, child of Lagos." Adebayo ran. He sprinted through the war-torn streets, dodging debris and the occasional stray bullet. The whispers followed, growing louder with each step. He knew somehow that these beings were connected to his sister's disappearance. As night fell, Adebayo found himself in the ruins of a once bustling market. The eerie quiet was broken only by the distant sounds of conflict and the ever-present whispers. He slumped against a wall, exhausted and terrified. A hand touched his shoulder. Adebayo nearly screamed, but a familiar voice cut through his panic. "Ade, it's me." It was Chidi, his childhood friend and now a medic working with one of the less violent factions. Chidi's eyes were wide with fear and concern. "What are you doing out here? It's not safe." Adebayo quickly explained about Folake and the strange message. Chidi's face paled. "Omo Odale, I've heard rumors. They say it's a cult, or maybe something worse. People go missing, and those who return are changed." A scream pierced the night, followed by the sound of shattering glass. Chidi grabbed Adebayo's arm. "We need to move, now." They made their way through the darkened streets, Chidi leading them to a makeshift shelter where his faction had set up a temporary base. As they approached, gunfire erupted nearby. Chidi cursed, pulling Adebayo into an alley. "Listen," Chidi whispered urgently. "Find the old library on Broad Street. There's a woman there, Mama Echo. She knows things about the city that others don't. If anyone can help you find Folake and understand what's happening, it's her." Before Adebayo could respond, a grenade exploded on the street, sending shrapnel flying. Chidi shoved him deeper into the alley. "Go, I'll draw them away." Adebayo wanted to protest, but Chidi was already gone, shouting to attract the attention of the approaching fighters. With a heavy heart, Adebayo slipped away into the night. The journey to Broad Street was a nightmare. Adebayo dodged patrols from various factions, narrowly avoided being press-ganged into a militia, and constantly felt the presence of the whispering entities. By the time he reached the dilapidated library, he was exhausted and on edge. The building loomed before him, its windows dark and uninviting. As Adebayo approached, he heard a voice. Not a whisper, but a strong, clear tone that seemed to cut through the chaos of the city. "Come in, child. You've kept me waiting long enough." Inside, Surrounded by towering bookshelves and flickering candles sat an elderly woman. Her eyes, unlike the horrifying blackness Adebayo had seen earlier, seemed to hold galaxies within them. "Mama Echo?" Adebayo asked hesitantly. The woman nodded. "Sit. Your sister's fate and the future of Lagos itself hang in the balance. The Omo Odale have been waiting centuries for this moment of chaos to strike." As Mama Echo spoke, Adebayo learned the terrifying truth. The Omo Odale were ancient spirits, once worshipped and feared in equal measure. They fed on conflict and despair, growing stronger as society crumbled. The Civil War had given them the perfect opportunity to return. "Your sister," Mama Echo said gravely, "has been taken as a vessel. If we don't stop the ritual by the next full moon, Folake and countless others will be lost forever, and the Omo Odale will plunge not just Lagos, but all of Nigeria into eternal darkness." Adebayo's mind reeled. "How can I stop them? I'm just one person." Mama Echo smiled, a glint of hope in her otherworldly eyes. "You are more than you know, child. The blood of ancient protectors runs through your veins. With the right knowledge and tools, you can face the Omo Odale and banish them once more." Over the next days, Adebayo trained with Mama Echo, learning forgotten rituals and unearthing powers he never knew he possessed. All the while, the whispers grew stronger, and reports came in of more people vanishing or returning, changed. As the full moon approached, Adebayo set out for the heart of Lagos Island, where Mama Echo believed the Omo Odale were gathering their strength. The city had become a war zone, with different factions clashing in the streets, unaware of the true threat that loomed over them all. Adebayo moved through the chaos like a ghost, his newfound abilities allowing him to slip past dangers unseen. As he neared his destination, he began to hear chanting mixed with the ever-present whispers. In a clearing surrounded by crumbling buildings, Adebayo found them. Hundreds of people stood in a trance-like state, their eyes black and empty. At the center of the gathering, hovering above the ground, was Folake, but it wasn't really her anymore. Folake's body was a conduit, a swirling mass of darkness pouring into her from the sky above. The Omo Odale were using her as a gateway to fully enter our world. Adebayo steeled himself and stepped forward, chanting the words Mama Echo had taught him. The air crackled with energy as he faced the ancient evil that threatened to consume his home. The battle that followed was unlike anything Lagos had ever seen. Adebayo's newfound powers clashed with the dark energy of the Omo Odale. Buildings crumbled, the earth shook, and for a moment it seemed as though the very fabric of reality might tear apart. In the end, it came down to a simple choice. Mama Echo's teachings had prepared Adebayo for this moment, but nothing could have truly readied him for the weight of the decision. To banish the Omo Odale and save Lagos, he would have to sacrifice Folake. With tears streaming down his face, Adebayo completed the ritual. A blinding light engulfed the clearing, and the screams of the Omo Odale filled the air as they were torn from our world and cast back into the abyss. When it was over, Adebayo cradled his sister's lifeless body, his victory hollow in the face of such loss. As dawn broke over Lagos, the sounds of conflict began to fade. The Omo Odale's influence had been broken, and with it, much of the hatred and violence that had consumed the city. Adebayo carried Folake's body back to the library where Mama Echo was waiting. The old woman's eyes were filled with sorrow and understanding. "You have saved countless lives, child," she said softly. "Your sister's sacrifice will not be forgotten." In the days that followed, a fragile peace settled over Lagos. The various factions, freed from the subtle influence of the Omo Odale, began to negotiate. It would be a long road to recovery, but there was hope. Adebayo, forever changed by his experience, took up the mantle of protector. With Mama Echo's guidance, he worked to rebuild Lagos and keep watch for any signs that the ancient evils might one day return. As he stood on a rooftop looking out over the slowly healing city, Adebayo whispered a promise to Folake and to all those who had been lost. Never again. I'll keep them safe. All of them. The sun set on Lagos, and for the first time in months, the only whispers in the air were those of a city coming back to life.